Hey there, folks. It's Saturday, and this is Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere Retold. I'm your host, Connor Jones, and today we're going to dive back in the past and share one of those stories from that place, you know the one, Poverty Flats, Wyoming. It's just about as close as you can get to the middle of nowhere. But before we get rolling with our throwback story, here's a message from our sponsors. We're sponsored by the Copper Corner Cafe in Basin, Wyoming. The Copper Corner Cafe is open for breakfast and lunch Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Stop by and try any of their delicious menu items featuring homemade bread for all sandwiches. Ooh, that sounds good to me. And, of course, their famous pie for dessert. Breakfast is served all day, so come on in to the Copper Corner Cafe. If you're farming in the Bighorn Basin, you know that input prices aren't doing us any favors this year. Between the high cost of nitrogen and the falling price of sugar, every pound of fertilizer has to count. That's why 307 Pest Management, LLC, is offering something straightforward. The risk-free First 40. I'll bring my multispectral drone to your field and map your first 40 acres for free. We'll look at the soil variability, identify the low-yield zones, and create a precision prescription file for your VRA equipment. If the data doesn't show you a clear path to saving money or boosting your stand, you don't owe me a dime. Don't leave your yields to guesswork. Let's see what's actually happening in your soil before the planners roll. Search 307 Pest Management, LLC on Facebook or call me, Connor, to book your first 40 today. That's 307-250-0614. Okay. It's July 25th. Yesterday was the 24th of July. So if you are from Utah or are a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you know July 24th is a pretty big deal. And in Utah, it's a state holiday. Now, it's also a really big deal in Burlington, Wyoming, where I went to high school. There's a parade and a program and sporting events, all kinds of stuff. And it's a lot of fun. And it also happens to mean, since my twin brother Adam lives in Utah, he doesn't have work on the 24th. So he came up to Wyoming this past weekend, this weekend, and we're hanging out, having a lot of fun. And we actually made a video together about being identical twins. And that just made me think, you know what? It's a good week to throw back to episode 18. You have a twin? By the way, that video we made, I plan on linking it in the show notes and posting it on our Facebook page. It's pretty hilarious. If you're into mockumentaries, like fake documentaries, then you'll appreciate it. So, anyways, here is our throwback story. You have a twin? I'm here with a special guest today. In fact, I'm joined by my twin brother, Adam.
Well, thanks for having me on today. It's a delight. I've listened to the past podcasts, and many times I've wanted to put in my 2 cents, so here we go.
Yeah, your 2 cents. Yeah, as you know, all of the characters in my podcast are fictional. Completely fictional. And I don't know, maybe there's some basis to the character of Fred. So Adam's here today to put in his 2 cents when it comes to the character of Fred. So we are actually filming from a pretty cool location. You want to tell him where we're at?
Yeah, we are actually in right on site where all these stories took place, many of them, in Poverty Flats here in Wyoming. And we're sitting in the fabled F-150 where a good deal of these stories originated.
Yeah, she's pretty dusty. There's some dog hair in here, and it's hot, still hot here in Poverty Flats. But yeah, we thought we would record somewhere authentic. So here we are, back where it all began, you might say. Anyways, one of the main reasons that Adam's here today is because this story for this week is actually titled, You Have a Twin? And no, it's kind of a compilation of the experiences that we have had with people getting mixed up between the two of us. And it might give you a little taste of what having a twin is like. So,
All right. Well, let's jump into it.
okay, here's the story. If you feel so inclined to comment whenever, you can always jump in. So,
Sounds good.
okay. When people ask me what it's like having a twin, I always tell them it's the greatest. In truth, I've actually been a twin my entire life, so in reality, I can't compare it to anything else. However, I have loved almost every minute of having a twin brother, so I still don't feel bad saying it's great, even when I don't have the authority granted by experience to claim it is better than the alternative. Being born on the same day as my brother meant that I always had a built-in friend, and as we grew older, there was always someone who had my back and understood me better than anyone else. Yeah, it sound pretty accurate?
Yeah. Well, it was funny. Just yesterday, my wife I was telling her about our birthday party, and she said, "You mean your birthday party?" I said, "Yeah, my birthday party that Connor showed up to."
Yeah, well. We shared every birthday. Yep. Took turns blowing out candles on cakes, and
Yeah.
but we didn't know any different.
It was great.
Yeah. Yes, being a twin certainly has its perks. Fred and I spent countless hours together, and as I have previously mentioned in these stories, we shared everything from a birthday, there it is, and a bedroom to clothes and money. We also looked very similar, which twins tend to do. One of the most common questions any twin will get after someone realizes they are a twin is, "Are you identical?" One of my friends who has a twin sister told me that he never knows what to do when people ask if he and his sister are identical. Apparently, it is hard to answer that question without insulting the intelligence of whoever asks it. "Well," he says, "she is my sister." Usually the person nods and smiles, waiting for more. Then after a moment, realization dawns and they walk away, red in the face. For Fred and I, the answer to the question, "Are you identical?" is complicated. Do you want to explain that one?
Well, we do look very similar, but we are indeed not identical twins. I think you explained what we actually are here in the story.
Yeah, as we're mere twins.
Yes. And that basically means that Connor is right-handed. He has a calic on the right side of his head. I'm left-handed. I have a calic on the left side of my head. What else?
Aren't our dominant eyes switched too?
I actually have a dominant right eye.
Okay, so we're not switched there. But otherwise, we are just basically like a mirror image of each other.
Yeah, pretty much.
Then that can be a shock for me on any given morning, as you can imagine. After I recover from the initial surprise of looking into the mirror and seeing Fred standing there, I realize my good looks have not in fact diminished, but I am merely seeing my reflection. In reality, I am known as the good-looking twin after all, which is a fact that you don't need to bother verifying with Fred.
Since I am sitting right here, I will verify this fact, and I'm fact-checking it. That is false. I am obviously the better-looking twin and taller by about 1.5 inches.
We'll have to put a picture out and then get votes on that.
Yeah. Well, you don't even have to do that. It's already settled.
Given that we are so similar, people often mistake Fred for me or me for Fred, just as if we were actually identical twins. I admit we like to take advantage of the situation, but in spite of our efforts, people occasionally do get us confused for one another entirely by accident. It all started when Mom brought us home from the hospital back in 1997. We were born 6 weeks premature and didn't come home until we were a few weeks old, at which point we were both totally bald, as most babies tend to be, and really did look identical. Upon setting our car seats down, Mom looked at the two of us and realized she had no clue which baby was Fred and which baby was Al. She freaked out for a bit, then realized our wristbands from the hospital had our names on them. So she hurried to paint one of my pinky fingernails, or my pinky toe. Was it my pinky toe or my pinky fingernail?
I don't remember.
I think it was a fingernail. So yeah, she painted one of my pinky fingernails pink while she had us figured out. Each time she gave us a bath, she had to make sure she kept us straight until she got one of the pinkies painted again. Or at least this is the story she would tell to reassure us when my Uncle Greg would tell Fred and I we got switched at birth and I was actually Fred and Fred was me.
I used to ponder at night what I would do if I was actually Al instead of Fred. And I guess I finally decided, well, it didn't matter. I was Fred now, and so nothing was going to change that, even if we were mixed up.
Well, if you got switched, that would be your lucky day, wouldn't it?
Oh, my goodness. Nightmare, actually.
As we aged, we continued to look like the same human in separate bodies. By the time we were in grade school, we had caught on to the implications of our situation and one day decided to put our teacher, Mrs. Vandersloot, to the test. During morning recess, we went into the bathroom and switched all of our clothes, from our shoes clear down to our wristwatches. With all the excitement of undercover agents, we hurried back to our seats, with me sitting at Fred's desk and Fred sitting at mine. It took some concentration to answer every question leveled at Fred as if I were him rather than myself. Fred struggled too, and at one point almost slipped up and answered a question Mrs. Vandersloot directed at Fred. But he was able to save the situation by turning his answer into a violent coughing fit. "Are you all right?" she asked, giving him a concerned look. "Al, why don't you go get a drink?" Too late, I realized my mistake, having risen from my seat to go visit the drinking fountain. "Where are you going, Fred?" Mrs. Vandersloot said, turning from my brother to look at me. "To get a drink," I responded, as if it were apparent. At this point, my classmates, who knew very well what Fred and I were up to and had not been fooled for a moment, started to giggle. "You didn't ask," Mrs. Vandersloot said, bewildered by the sudden outburst of laughter coming from my traitorous peers. "Mrs. Vandersloot," my buddy Marty Flincherland piped up. "Yes, Marty?" she asked. I shot Marty an obsidian glare, but he just grinned back. "Mrs. Vandersloot, that isn't Fred, it's Al." "I know that's Al," Mrs. Vandersloot said, puzzled. "No, that's Al and that's Fred," Marty said, pointing to me and then to Fred. "I thought that was Fred," Mrs. Vandersloot said, turning to point at me. "You're sitting in Fred's desk," she said, her eyes narrowed. I avoided her eyes like a dog caught in the act of eating a leather boot. "Al," she said slowly, "did you and Fred switch places today?" With some effort, I smothered the grin that was banging around just below the surface and said with a straight face, "What do you mean, Mrs. Vandersloot? I'm Fred and that's Al." I leveled a finger at my brother, whose face had turned roughly the color of a beet. A smile flickered across Mrs. Vandersloot's face. "All right, boys, the jig is up. I know you switched places." The whole class laughed, and Fred and I shrugged sheepishly. "Go back to your real seats, please," she said. I don't think she ever mixed the two of us up again.
I do have to say, living in such a small community, swapping places was a hard thing to do. We'd get mixed up for a couple of minutes, but it was really hard to pull something like this off. And our little switcheroo only lasted about 2 class periods.
Yeah, if we had gone to a bigger school, I think we might have pulled it off a little better, but not in Little Poverty Flats.
Yeah, people knew us too well.
Yeah. As time went on, Fred and I continued to resemble one another, but as is often the case, we did not remain the same height. About the 8th grade, Fred had a growth spurt and managed to grow an inch or so taller than me, much to my dismay. In spite of this height difference, people continued to confuse the two of us. After serving missions for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we both attended college at BYU, Idaho, as did many of the missionaries we had served with in our respective missions, and this led to a whole new wave of confusion. One morning, while I was out for a jog, I was waiting at a stoplight when a car pulled up next to me. I glanced over and discovered, much to my surprise, that the young woman sitting in the passenger seat of the car had recognized me, though I had never seen her in my life. Her eyes lit up, and she excitedly rolled down the window. "Hey!" she yelled. "Fred, how are you?" Even though I should have been used to this kind of thing after an entire lifetime of being a twin, it was still a bit awkward. I smiled back at the complete stranger and continued jogging in place. "Fred, it's me, Brittany! We served in the same mission!" she shouted. Glancing up to see if the light was going to change anytime soon, I yelled back, "I think you've got the wrong twin!" Her eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. "What? Really? People said Fred had a twin, but I thought it was a joke." The light turned green and the man driving the car sped off. I felt kind of bad for the gal, mostly because of the shocked expression on her face as they drove away. After that experience, I just started pretending I was Fred when I met people in passing on campus. If I stopped to explain to every stranger that I met the fact that I had no clue who they were, then I would have been late to class at least once a week. "Hey, Fred," someone would beam as I hurried off to class. "How's it going?" I would smile back. "We'll have to catch up later. I'm headed to class." "Sounds great," they'd say, and we would hurry on our way. Later, Fred and I would talk about whom we had met that day. We were roommates when we first got to college, and most days our conversation would include a debrief on the latest run-ins with strangers that knew us. You want to do your parts? You could even read your parts.
Oh, yeah. Might as well. Met this gal today, and she gave me a huge hug.
Fred told me.
Didn't have a clue who she was, but she struck so fast I didn't have a chance to tell her I'd never seen her in my life.
I chuckled, a huge smile spreading across my face. Yeah, today this random guy shook my hand and gave me a pat on the back. He asked me how Molly was doing. I just told him I think she's doing pretty good. Who's Molly, by the way?
I don't know anyone named Molly,
Fred replied. Oh, so that guy was actually a complete stranger? You don't know who he was?
Well, I don't know anyone named Molly, so probably, yeah.
Okay, I said, a little unnerved. Just then, I received a notification on my phone. I glanced over the message and frowned.
What is it?
Fred asked. A friend just told me they saw me in the hall on campus, and I didn't even smile or wave back. I fixed Fred with a grin. You're offending my friends.
Well, what am I supposed to do? I don't know everyone, you know. Do we just smile at everybody we pass, just in case they know one of us?
Fred huffed. I thought for a moment, then replied, Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Just to be safe, you know. So for a while, Fred and I decided we would just be nice to everyone we saw and smile at each person we passed, just in case they were an acquaintance of the other twin. If we didn't, we were just sure we were going to get a message through social media from an old friend who was livid because they saw us for the first time in months and we didn't even bother to look up. Things got really interesting when both Fred and I were engaged to our future spouses at the same time. Lily and I were taking a social dance class together, and everyone in the class knew we were engaged. Well, one day, one of the other girls came up to me before class had started with a serious expression on her face. Hey, Al, I think you owe it to Lily to tell her, she began, arms folded across her chest. Tell her what? I asked, completely confused. I didn't have a clue what I had done, which, incidentally, happens to me more often than you might think. I saw you, she continued. Saw me? "I'm sorry, I don't have a clue what you're talking about," I said, my mind racing. "You were holding hands with a girl in the food court, and it wasn't Lily," she blurted out. I grinned, now relieved. "Oh, I see," I said. "You see, I have a twin brother, and he's also engaged," I replied. In hindsight, I shouldn't have been surprised the lady didn't believe my story. It took Lily coming over to back me up to finally convince her that I did in fact have a twin brother, and he was in fact engaged as well. Believe it or not, that is not the most bizarre thing that has happened since Fred and I met our wives. Fred and his wife were married in May, and Lily and I were married in July. At the reception held following my wedding, Fred and Rose were approached by an elderly gentleman who knew Lily. He smiled and heartily pumped Fred's hand, then congratulated him on marrying such a beautiful young lady. "You make a great couple," he announced with a wide smile. Fred felt so bad for the poor guy, he couldn't bear to tell him that he and Rose had been married for a couple months, and that this was not in fact his party. Do you want to do Rose's voice?
I better not. I'll catch some flack.
Okay. Rose, Fred's wife, later said, "I wasn't even wearing a white dress. He was so confused." Is that a pretty good Rose voice?
No comment.
Okay.
Speaking of getting mixed up at weddings, Rose's grandpa mixed you and me up at my wedding. You were holding the door open for guests to come in, which is atypical of a groom. And he said something like, "Shouldn't you be in the back? You're cutting it kind of close."
Yeah.
It wasn't until probably 3 months later that he realized he hadn't even been talking to me.
Yeah, no. The weddings, getting mixed up or confusing people at weddings, that's interesting. A few years later, Fred and his wife were living in Wyoming in my grandma and grandpa's old house, and Rose was expecting their first baby. Lily and I were still living in Idaho, and we planned to visit to Wyoming. As luck would have it, Rose started having contractions as we were driving from Idaho, and she ended up getting life-flighted to the hospital in Billings, Montana, because her doctor was worried their baby would come early. So, when Lily and I arrived in Wyoming, Fred and Rose were not around, which was unfortunate, because we were looking forward to seeing them in addition to the rest of my family. On Sunday, we went to church with my parents, and little did we know the stir we would cause. A church leader from the region was also in attendance that day, and he, being accustomed to seeing Fred and his wife in the congregation, looked down and realized, with a start, that Fred was accompanied by not just a different wife than he had previously met, but a 2-year-old son. When the leader gave his remarks in church that day, he was visibly shaken, and immediately following the services, met with the other local church leaders. "Okay," he said, "before we do anything else, I need to know, why does Fred have 2 wives, and why is everyone okay with it?" My cousin, who was in the meeting, was able to calm the leader down and explain I was Fred's twin brother, and he was not, in fact, practicing plural marriage. Later, when we visited Fred and Rose in the hospital in Billings, we had a good laugh about the whole situation. I guess Fred finally decided he was tired of disappointing people who thought he was me, so he grew a full beard. Now people are hard-pressed to mix the two of us up. That being said, just last week I was at the gas station in Grable when a complete stranger looked up from the pump and fixed me with a large smile. "Hi, how've you been?" "I'm doing well, thanks," I replied, feeling this familiar nervous sensation as I racked my brain to remember how I knew the man who was so pleased to see me. "Do I know you?" I asked. I should have known better than to ask. "Sure you do. We worked together all last summer. It's me, Clayton." "Oh," I said, hanging up the gas nozzle. "I think you mean my twin brother, Fred. He worked for Bighorn Engineering." "Fred has a twin?" he asked, shocked. "Yup," I replied. "I'll let him know you say hi." "Okay," he said. "Well, it was nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too." I gave him a little half smile, and he turned to walk into the gas station. I got back into the truck and started the engine. I dialed Fred's number, and he picked it up on the second ring.
"Hey, man,"
he said. I grinned and replied, "Hey, apparently you need to keep growing out that beard." Fred laughed.
"Did it happen again?"
"You know it. Know a guy by the name of Clayton?"
"Yeah, I do. Did he think you were me?"
Fred asked. "Yup. Have you ever considered getting your name embroidered on all of your shirts?" I asked. Fred chuckled and replied,
"No, but have you ever considered getting a face tattoo?"
"Yeah, there you go. It's crazy. Still getting mixed up. In fact, this morning, Adam's son Asher grabbed my leg and I was patting him on the head and he says, "Daddy," and I had to explain to him that I was not his dad.
Yeah, not even the beard is keeping us from getting mixed up. But, I mean, we probably look pretty similar from the knees down.
Yeah, for sure. No.
It's fun being a twin. There's all types of stories that come along with it. And I'd say the vast majority of them are good.
Yeah. It's been great. So, I'm glad I am a twin. And I'm glad that you joined me for this podcast episode.
Well, I'm glad I'm the better looking twin.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely up for debate still. But yeah, no, as always, if you are a twin, we want to hear from you. I know you're out there, and we'd love to hear your best experience with confusing people, whether intentional or on accident. You can send us an email at untoldtalesthepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram. Remember to subscribe or sign up for our mailing list so you are notified every time we release a new episode, and we'll definitely have to have more guests on the podcast. This has been fun.
Yeah, I'm glad I was able to do it.
Yeah. Well, as always, this has been another untold tale from this side of nowhere, where we work twice as hard for half as much and still find time for the important things like fishing. See you next time, folks.